Good morning, all, and welcome to the Dan Beasley Show. Today's show is coming to you at 8:45 a.m. from Hartsville, South Carolina on July 15, 2013. This is Dan Beasley speaking and welcoming you to our episode today called Reprobate Minds. What is a reprobate mind? It's a mind that was once geared towards doing the right thing and has abandoned all righteousness and everything and has turned towards its evil natural tendencies. So today we're going to be going into our news editions first and then commentary at the end of the show. Right now in the news today we have a battle for the Sinai. The Sinai is part of Egypt, is a part of is a desert area, and it's part of the peninsula over in Egypt, and it's seen a surge of violence, the most since a coup that deposed President Mohammed Morsi. Sophia Jones on why Cairo can't afford to ignore the strategic yet unstable region, and this is originating from World News, coming from the Daily Beast. And the news content is when Khalid Saad answers his phone, there's often a voice on the other end threatening to behead him. It's a jihadist, I assume, he says calmly, but his exhaustion is palatable. Palatable. Saad is an activist fighting for the rights of the Bedouin of the Sinai Peninsula, but that long struggle is largely lawless region has grown ever more complicated and dangerous. Now a spate of killings apparently unleashed by the tumultuous overthrow of Egyptian President Mohammed Morsi's government has made things still worse in this strategically critical region on the border with Israel. Over the last few years, violent jihadists have tried to fill a power vacuum in the Sinai, and this is standard operating procedure for groups sympathetic to the goals of Al-Qaeda. They move in wherever state control is weak and local resentments are high. But the Sinai holds a geographically key position. It's next to Gaza, and everyone knows what that is. That's the Gaza Strip that is bordering Israel, that Israel gave up a few years back in order to acquire peace with Hezbollah, but it did not do any good. The smugglers are a vital lifeline between the Hamas-ruled enclave and the outside world. The other end of the border is next to the Israeli resort town of Eilat, where authorities found an unexploded rocket last week. Saad says the ideals of the peninsula militant groups are not native to the Sinai. The jihadists have come to Egypt with outside money and weapons. He says, and their numbers are relatively small, but the people of the Sinai can only wait so long for the military to crack down on the jihadists, which it seems reluctant to do under Morsi's Islamic government. In the end, said Saad, it might be up to the people, not to the army or the state, to crush the terrorist groups. And I might want to note that this was recorded back on July the 12th, 2013, in case some of you are wondering about the freshness of the content. The next news item is President Obama has taken it into his own hands to handle climate control issues. He's frustrated by a recalcitrant Congress, and he's vowed to take climate control in his own hands. Now he has to deliver. 3 weeks after giving an ambitious speech to outline his proposal, the president begins the arduous task of executing it, and Obama's plan is complicated and a mix of rulemaking and federal permitting that's tough to encapsulate in a neat sales pitch, and may be even tougher to put into action. By pledging to use his authority under existing laws, Obama freed himself from the need to sell the plan to skeptical lawmakers whose support he would need if he had to push a major climate bill through Congress. Even so, he still needs public support to help shield vulnerable Democrats already facing criticism over the plan. Their fate in the 2014 elections will determine whether Obama can accomplish much of anything during his final 2 years. And that's President Obama is on the hot seat right now on climate control. So moving on, and this is regarding the Zimmerman verdict down in Florida, where he was on trial for killing the teenager Trayvon Martin, and of course they were expecting a backlash from this. But anyway, the new Black Panthers, and everyone remembers the Black Panther group from the 60s. Well, this is a new version of them, and they call themselves the new Black Panthers. They're saying that the Zimmerman verdict means war. Of course, George Zimmerman was exonerated from all charges for the shooting death of Trayvon Martin. However, you have to realize that this was done through the legal system, and it was done with a peer group of jurors, and it was taken into consideration that it was prosecuted properly, and also it was executed properly. And the evidence cannot prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that George Zimmerman was in fact guilty. So if they can only convict on whether or not it's beyond a shadow of a doubt, and they could not. This did not mean that the jurors did not believe some of what was said, about whether or not Martin had committed a crime or not. It was only based on the preponderance of the evidence. And the article goes on to say, are you an Obama hater? Find out what the Republicans don't want you to know. And it says go to onepoliticalplaza.com. The George Zimmerman verdict is a declaration of war that only the devil can applaud, according to the Twitter feed for the new Black Panther Party. The Twitter account managed by the group's national chairman, Malik Zulu Shabazz, further urged followers to take to the streets and stay there. We're at war, Shabazz tweeted. It's silly and immoral to call for peace when war has been declared. The new Black Panther Party slammed what it called the white man's justice system, claiming the courts base their law on the white is right theory. Only a devil would applaud the verdict, only a natural born devil. By applauding that verdict, you in fact admit that you are a devil, wrote Shabazz. The major problem with whites is they see white as exalted above all others, Twitter feed added. Shabazz tweeted that as a lawyer, I am disappointed and embarrassed at the judicial system that can't deliver jail time for a clear killer. Of whites, Shabazz charged, you are all born to kill and murder the darker people, as Jesus says in John chapter 8, verse 44, a liar and murder from the beginning. I think he is referring to Satan in that particular instance. And anyway, the Black Panther Party has declared war on the white race, according to this article. So, moving on to our next news article. Fukushima contaminated water in the ocean for 2 years. Groundwater is still leaking into the basement of the damaged reactors. And Shunichi Tanaka, the head of the nuclear regulatory authorities in Japan and the country's chief regulatory nuclear regulator, announced on Wednesday that the nuclear power plant at Fukushima has been leaking contaminated water into the oceans for the 2 years since the accident, and saw that 3 of the plant's 6 reactors suffered a meltdown. The problem stems from the fact that the groundwater is leaking into the basement of the damaged reactors and is becoming contaminated, and while the water is being pumped out and stored in large tanks on site, the inflow has not yet stopped, meaning that even more groundwater, ever more groundwater is entering into the basement and becomes contaminated. Tanaka explains that neither his staff nor those working for the plant's operator have discovered where the leaks are coming from and therefore have not been able to stop them. Next in the news, we have an article coming out saying that high energy snacks and drinks are linked to bowel cancer. These foods are becoming more popular in Western diets, and the consumption of high energy snacks and drinks have been linked for the first time to bowel cancer by a group of Scottish scientists. In a major study, implications were that the notoriously sugar rich Scottish diet, researchers studied the dietary habits of 2,000 patients diagnosed with bowel cancer and compared them with the food intake of a similar sized healthy population. Scientists from Edinburgh and Aberdeen universities analyzed the data and found a statistical association between bowel cancer patients and the high consumption of what they described as high energy snack foods and sugar sweetened beverages. Moving to our next story, cancer treatment has just gotten a huge boost. This is coming from the Independent. A cure just got closer thanks to a tiny British company, and the result could change the lives of millions. A revolution is brewing on an English business park as scientists harness our natural-born killers to T cells to target malign tumors. A single-story workshop on a nondescript business park in Oxfordshire is not the sort of place where you expect scientific revolutions to take place, but behind white-painted walls of this small startup company, scientists are talking about the impossible potential cure for cancer. For the past 20 years, the former academics who set up Immunocore have worked hard on realizing their dream of developing a totally new approach to cancer treatment. Finally, it looks as if their endeavors are beginning to pay off. In the past 3 weeks, the company has signed contracts with 2 of the biggest players in the pharmaceutical industry, which could lead to hundreds of millions of pounds flowing into the firm's unique research on cancer immunotherapy using the body's own immune system to fight tumor cells. Immunocore is probably the only company in the world that has developed a way of harnessing the power of the immune system's natural-born killer cells, the T cells of the blood, which nature has designed over millions of years of evolution to seek out and kill invading pathogens such as viruses and bacteria. So they have developed a method for these T cells to locate and destroy cancer cells. Moving on, America is suffering from the fury of people that are not happy with the not guilty verdict of George Zimmerman, and they are marching down the streets and subways of Los Angeles and Oakland. They burned flags, and rubber bullets were fired into the crowds of LA by the police department officers. 7 arrests were made around 11 p.m. in New York City as protest tensions were on the rise. The jury took just 16 hours to reach a verdict on Saturday. Twitter used the neighborhood watch volunteer Dead Man Walking to organize these protests. And it was in the second day of demonstrations as of yesterday in the wake of the non-guilty verdict for George Zimmerman after he shot dead an unarmed teenager, Trayvon Martin. Demonstrations have occurred from Florida to Atlanta to New York, and they remain largely peaceful, though the LA protesters managed to shut down the entire freeway and thousands of New Yorkers mobbed Times Square and blocked traffic for an hour. So they have linked it to the civil rights movement, and we'll probably be hearing more about that in the news as time progresses. Moving on, BBC.